The morning my neighbor asked me to fix her gate was the morning I finally realized how close a man can come to disappearing without actually being gone, because I was already halfway invisible. The world moving through my days like a shadow that paid rent and kept its head down, convinced that nothing meaningful would ever knock on my door again. Before the story truly unfolds, take a moment. If you enjoy deeply emotional, real, life-inspired stories like this, to like the video, share it with someone who loves powerful storytelling, leave a comment and subscribe to the channel Stories Beyond the Porch. Your support keeps these stories alive and reaching hearts that need them. I had lived on that quiet street for almost 8 years, long enough to know every crack in the pavement and every tree that shed its leaves onto my yard each fall, but not long enough for anyone to truly know me. I was the man who waved politely, who fixed his own roof, who never asked for help. After my wife passed and my daughter moved 3 states away to start her own life, silence became my roommate. The house echoed with memories I never invited but could never evict. Each morning I woke up with a weight on my chest, a mixture of grief and exhaustion, and each night I fell asleep wondering if this was simply how the rest of my life would feel. Useful but unnoticed, breathing but not truly living. My neighbor had moved in about a year earlier. She was quiet in a different way, the kind of quiet that carried strength instead of defeat. I noticed her only in passing, tending her small garden, repainting her porch by herself, struggling with things most people would have asked someone else to help with. We exchanged nods, nothing more. Then one afternoon, as I was loading tools back into my shed after a long day of odd jobs, she stood at the edge of her driveway, hesitant, as if she were unsure whether she was allowed to interrupt my life. She asked me to fix her gate. It leaned inward, one hinge nearly rusted through, barely holding on. I agreed without hesitation, because fixing things had become the one language I still spoke fluently. Broken objects made sense to me in ways people no longer did. She mentioned I deserved a little extra reward, and I remember brushing it off, uncomfortable with the idea of receiving anything beyond a thank you. I didn't know then that those words would mark the beginning of something far greater than a repaired gate. The next morning, I brought my tools over and got to work. The gate was heavier than it looked, and the wood had warped over time, resisting every attempt to straighten it. My hands ached and sweat soaked through my shirt, but I didn't stop. As I worked, I became aware of her watching from a distance, not hovering, just present. There was something grounding about that, something that made the air feel less heavy. When I finally finished, the gate swung smoothly, no longer threatening to collapse under its own weight. It felt good to fix something that mattered to someone else. She insisted I come inside for water. The house smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and old books, the kind of scent that made a place feel lived in rather than staged. On the table sat 2 plates of food she had already prepared, as if she had known I would say yes long before I ever did. That was the first crack in the wall I had built around myself. I hadn't sat at a table with someone else in years. We didn't speak much, but the silence felt different, shared rather than empty. Over the following weeks, small requests turned into routine interactions. A loose step, a flickering porch light, a stubborn window that refused to open. I told myself I was just being helpful, but deep down I knew I was finding excuses to cross the small distance between our houses. With each visit, something inside me softened. I learned pieces of her life without words, how she paused at a photograph before dusting the shelf, how she carefully folded laundry as if every crease mattered, how she lingered by the window at dusk watching the street the same way I did. The real challenge came when my own house began to feel unbearable again. Fixing her gate hadn't fixed me. The nights were still long, the memories still sharp. One evening, after a particularly hard day, I sat alone on my porch, staring at nothing, wondering if I had reached the end of whatever usefulness I once had. That was when I noticed a small box on my steps. Inside was a handwritten note and a loaf of home-made bread, still warm. She had left it quietly, without expectation. That simple act broke something open in me. I realized how starved I had been for kindness that wasn't transactional, for connection that didn't require explanation. I began to understand that the extra reward she mentioned had never been about money or favors. It was about reminding two lonely people that they were still capable of giving and receiving care. As the seasons changed, so did we. We spent more time together, not fixing things, just existing in the same space. The street that once felt isolating now felt like a shared world. I found myself laughing again, sometimes surprised by the sound of it. The grief didn't disappear, but it loosened its grip. I learned that healing doesn't arrive all at once. It shows up quietly, disguised as small moments, repaired gates, and warm bread on cold evenings. The greatest test came when she fell ill. Nothing dramatic at first, just fatigue, missed days in the garden, lights left off longer than usual. I stepped in without being asked, cooking meals, handling errands, fixing what needed fixing. This time, I wasn't just repairing wood and metal. I was showing up. In doing so, I finally understood that I wasn't invisible after all. I mattered, not because I was strong or useful, but because I cared. By the time she recovered, our lives were no longer separate stories happening side by side. They were intertwined, steady, and real. I looked at my own reflection one morning and barely recognized the man staring back. He looked lighter. Not unscarred, but alive. The gate still stood strong, a quiet symbol of the moment everything began to change. If this story has touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who might need hope today, and subscribe to Stories Beyond the Porch. Your engagement helps these stories reach others who are standing on the edge of loneliness, waiting for a sign. Before you go, I have a special request. Please comment a line below about a small moment in your life that changed everything for you. Your story might be the extra reward someone else needs to keep going.